Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Philippines in Focus, Insights and Opportunities for U.S. Institutions. We're so glad you could join us today. My name is Nick Paddock, and I'm a Client Success Director here at IDP in the U.S. I'll be co-hosting today's session with my colleagues, Romina Romero, the Destination Manager for the U.S. and Canada, and Jojo Habana, our Country Director in the Philippines. We're looking forward to sharing the latest student trends, insights, and opportunities emerging from the Philippines. We'll walk through key data points, student preferences, and actionable strategies we can use to strengthen our recruitment in this growing and dynamic market. We'll also have time for Q&A at the end, so please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A chat box as we go. If you have to jump off early from the webinar, don't worry. Our external relations team will be emailing out the webinar to all that registered. So, before we dive into the trends, I want to start with a quick overview of who we are at IDP, especially for those who might be newer to working with us, attending our webinar for the first time, or considering becoming a partner. IDP is a global leader in international education services. We support students across the full funnel journey from research and application to enrollment through 4 main channels. First, student placement. With over 200 offices in 35 source countries, including the Philippines, we have US trained management and counselors. English language testing, where we manage IELTS at over 2,000 test locations in more than 60 countries, including 400 plus computer-delivered IELTS centers. English language testing, with 12 campuses in Cambodia and Taiwan. Our reach is further amplified by our omnichannel platform, including the IDP Live app, downloaded over 1.6 million times, and a digital ecosystem that draws over 100 million visitors annually across 30 global websites. In total, we've placed more than 800,000 students into institutions across our 6 destination countries, the US, of course, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Ireland. So whether it's through our on-the-ground counselor network or digital tools, we're helping institutions connect with qualified students in more personable, scalable ways. All right, next slide, please. Before we dive into student demand trends and share about the Philippines, I want to briefly highlight how IDP supports institutions through a range of strategic solutions. We approach student recruitment holistically and with data, combining human expertise with digital tools to deliver results across 3 core areas. Recruitment. Our global counselor network is supported by technology, partner support, and the client success team to help students get quick, transparent, and personalized options, matching them with the right course and institution. Marketing. Our app and network of translated, comprehensive hot courses and IDP websites help institutions reach students at the very beginning of their journey, often before they've even chosen a destination. And intelligence. Through real-time student search data and cutting-edge analytics, we can help partners make evidence-based decisions, track performance, and respond to emerging trends. These 3 pillars, recruitment, marketing, and intelligence, work together to provide institutions with a full funnel approach to reaching and enrolling international students. Next slide, please. One of the most powerful tools we have at IDP is our data, drawing from real-time student activity across our websites, offices, and the IDP Live app. This intelligence gives us a unique view into what students are searching for and how their interests are evolving. So let's take a look into recent data from our hot courses and IDP websites, focusing specifically on search activity from students in the Philippines between June 2024 and June 2025. So we're seeing some notable shifts here. Australia remains the top destination, but search volume has declined in recent months, largely due to a range of new government policies. In early 2025, the government introduced enrollment caps that limit new international student intakes. Visa processing has slowed for institutions nearing their cap, and the visa application fee has jumped from $476 to $1,072, with another increase to $1,340 planned for this July. Students now need a confirmation of enrollment form before applying for a visa, which adds pressure and complexity. These changes have created a perception of increased barriers, which may be turning some students toward more accessible alternatives. So Canada is seeing a similar pattern of decline, as we all know. In 2025, the country reduced its total study permit caps further by 10%, and this includes both new student and extensions within the same cap. In the first 4 months of 2025, student permits approvals dropped by 56%, with fewer than 31,000 new approvals, That's a 70% decline year over year. Approval rates are also down, and key source markets like India have seen a 31% drop. So new caps, financial proof requirements, and greater share of permits going to continuing students have made Canada a tougher destination for new applicants in general. So meanwhile, in the US, is currently in third place, but search interest with Filipino students is up 25.6% year over year. So in contrast, this past month, we're seeing a resurgence in interest among Filipino students. Recent IDP research shows that the US is now being viewed as more favorably other than destinations with students citing policy stability, educational quality, and strong post-study career options as key drivers. Romina and Jojo will elaborate on this and share more insights. There's also increasing curiosity around regional destinations like Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and China, which offer more affordability and better proximity. So these shifts highlight the importance of staying responsive to student sentiment and interest. They show that the modest changes of policies, cost, and post-study work options can significantly impact destination preferences. So next slide, please. So now that we've looked at broader trends in student demand and how destination preferences are shifting, I'll hand things over to my colleague, Romina. As a reminder, Romina is our destination manager for the US and Canada. She'll take us deeper into the Filipino student mindset, what students are really looking for and why, and how US institutions can best position themselves to this evolving landscape. So Romina, over to you.
All right, thanks, Nick. But I think this is
Welcome.
more Jojo first for me. So I'll
Oh,
hand it over to Jojo first before we even do a deep dive for the Philippine US market.
All right. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Nick and Romina. I'll just take you through a macro level of what the Philippines looks like economically, and then Romina will be taking you directly to how we can help you more specifically. So, for the Philippines, economic drivers, although services has the biggest component of 50%, which is really a lot of business process outsourcing. So I'm sure you are familiar in the US. If you probably a lot of your outsourced services are actually done in the Philippines. And although industry like manufacturing, export, specifically electronics, comprise around 80% of the economic drivers, the things that I would like to highlight that's relevant to studying abroad is the fact that the bigger drivers are overseas Filipino worker remittances. So in the US, you probably would have interacted with a nurse who actually came from the Philippines. The reason why that's relevant to study abroad, and we always talk about that, is as a Filipino is used to working or has a relative friend or family member living abroad. So the prospects of them traveling halfway around the world to study is not something new to them because they have done that. Even locally in the country, people in the provinces actually travel to Manila or the big cities like Cebu or Baguio in order for them to study. So being away from family is something that's not new for them. So that's why studying abroad, traveling thousands of miles is not new because of that fact. The other thing that's also relevant is that it's a very young population. The average age of the Filipino is 25 years old. So a lot of opportunities, and with the younger generation right now, the reason why the volumes of international students or Filipinos studying abroad is increasing is the fact that the younger generation really want globalization. They embrace it. They want to go overseas, learn, explore, and work or live. And that's the basic profile of the Filipino. Next slide, please. And then zeroing in more in terms of the economic factors, one of the other reasons why the Filipino volume of students abroad is growing is because the economy is quite stable. You can see at the top there, GDP is, fairly strong. We were one of the best performing economies in Southeast Asia, especially post pandemic. It's really a strong recovery of, almost 5-6% GDP growth. Another thing that I mentioned is the population. Very high number of Filipinos that are young, and then very stable in terms of the inflation rate. And then I already talked about the OFW remittances. I think that's also quite relevant because of funding. Later on, Romina will be sharing with you how Filipinos generally fund their education, and a lot of that is also through sponsorships or of families who are living abroad. So if you have a Filipino family who's working in the US, for example, it's not uncommon for them to actually help fund the education of some family members who are coming across. It's also possible that they will allow them to live with them while they're working in the US as they study in institutions in the US. And then lastly, there is also, if you look at the rate of exchange, the main currency that we use, foreign currency we use in the Philippines is the US dollar. So, there's a lot of history between the Philippines and the US, and it's a very popular destination for us. And as you can see, even the rate of exchange is quite stable. It helps us in terms of how we plan funding for study abroad. The main capital is in Manila. You can see on the map there. It's an archipelago, 7,000 islands. We're located in Southeast Asia. And the next slide, I think we'll be able to expound a bit more. If we can go to the next slide. So you can see here, although it comprises 7,000 islands, it's really mainly divided into three. So Luzon is the topmost area there, Visayas in the middle, and Mindanao is at the bottom. And one thing about IDP that we've done over the years is we've really expanded our footprint. Among all education agencies in the Philippines, we have the largest, as you can see there, of 10 offices spread across the main islands. The key here is our presence in Metro Manila, because if you look at Metro Manila and you add Cebu, that's probably 40 to 50% of volume of of Filipinos studying abroad will be coming from these areas. And that's why it's important that we have the footprint. If you've been to the Philippines, you would know the traffic situation here is really quite heavy. And even a short distance of travel between Quezon City and Makati could take you an hour and a half, 2 hours. So it's important that we are close to where the students are. And that's why it's important for us to have that footprint that's spread across, all the different cities and provinces within the Philippines. Now, although the bulk of the volume really comes from Metro Manila and Cebu, one of the things we've learned as we expanded this footprint is there are students that study that really come from all sources or all places in the Philippines. I think if at all, this is one of the things that was a benefit from COVID, because with COVID we moved towards digital, meaning all our events were online, and it expanded our reach, and that's how we eventually found out that even as a student as far north, uh, or as far south of the Philippines, we're actually interested in studying abroad. So yeah, so it's very, very beneficial and a big advantage for us to actually have our services spread out in the country. Next slide, please. And in terms of the profile of the education sector in the country, maybe I'll go to the right side first. So you have around 4.8 million students. In terms of higher education, it's split between public and private institutions. Very high literacy rate of 97%. And in our recent estimate in 2024, we estimate that there's roughly around 50 million Filipinos that are studying abroad in the countries that were mentioned earlier by Nick. And in terms of program of interest, no surprise there that on top would be health and medicine, business and management, engineering, information technology, education, and hospitality. Although one of the things we've also noticed in the past few years is that there really been a growth of diversity of courses for Filipinos when they go abroad. One of the reasons they also explore studying abroad is the uniqueness of some of the courses that they want to study are not available here, and that's why they want to explore that overseas. Next slide, please. And yeah, in terms of the Philippines team, as I mentioned earlier, we do have 10 offices. I forgot to take note that we do have 24 counselors spread across those cities. So these are all highly trained counselors. Specifically, we do have 2 destination managers who specialize. And yeah, so it's a fairly solid number of IDP trained staff that's really there to support and help our students. And we're quite proud of the fact that we are student first and that we don't charge services for our students, which is quite helpful for them. I think this is my last slide, and I hand it over to Romina, who will talk more about how we can help you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Jojo. So this is just a summary of the recent emerging futures where about 360 Filipinos answered the survey. And you can really see here that when it comes to destination or where they're really looking at, it's really quality of education and value for money. So it's really important that what you bring in, whether a university or a college, or what programs you offer is important for them because they really think about where they're going to be going. You also notice that most of the time it's really more migration driven, but because that is the main concern, like the end goal is to really migrate or eventually find work after they study. One of the things that they really value, as what Jojo mentioned, is that a lot of the times the universities here or the colleges here in the Philippines are able to provide the bachelor's degrees, but when they want to specialize on something, this is where international education comes because we don't really have a lot of specialized programs. Okay, and we can deep dive even more about the US market and how the Filipinos are looking at it. So for next slide, this is the data coming from Open Doors. And on the right side, I know that some of you had questions about what kind of students we're getting. So out of the 4,100 enrolled students, only 1,800 are coming from the Philippines directly. So offshore market is a bit lower. So why is that? It's because, as you know, we really are everywhere. I can assume that you already have Filipino friends, you know, in Canada, in the US, in different parts of the world, right? So you can see that you shouldn't be only focusing on Philippines per se if you're looking for the Filipino market. We have a big community as well living in the Middle East. We have in Taiwan, in Hong Kong, in different parts of Southeast Asia. And we actually get students from these areas as well. And sometimes there's a little bit of confusion where when you are recruiting Filipinos, but in terms of where locally where the Philippines is at, the 7,000 islands, the market is generally 1,800 versus that 4,100 enrollees. One thing that we've noticed in our application since we started promoting in the past 6 months is that we noticed that we can't see a trend just yet. There's a mix of graduate, undergraduate, OPTs, non-degrees. And we really are trying to learn what type of market the Filipino market is right now. But definitely what Open Doors is shared here, we already also see it in our IDP numbers. So one thing that we have seen is that there's always a constant growth for the US. It's not big, it's always about 2 to 3% growth, but the growth is there. So what we're really interested at is really trying to diversify and learn more about our partners so that we can promote you even further here in the Philippines. So um what we're trying to really promote here is because you have the undergraduate and because you also have the mature market, we definitely recommend that when you are going here in the Philippines, you really have to drive and take time to go to and visit the international schools because about 90% of their students study abroad and generally 50% of those students actually go to the US. So it's actually really worth it to visit the Philippines and meet these students. They're quite organized. All of the IB schools, international schools, really entertain you guys. And most of the time for the agents or education agencies, what we see is really a mix. We see a mix of scholars, we see a mix of associate degrees, colleges, mature students, and some DIY students. Top receiving states, you can see, and if you'll notice, it's also where most of the Filipinos are: California, New York, Hawaii, Massachusetts, and Texas. So on the next slide, please. I know that some of you had questions about the funding and in terms of sources. So it's really a mix. Generally for UG market, we have parents. We also have some students that are really self-funded. So these are mature students. They've been working here for about 10 years and they just really want to improve on their skills. This can either be related to the business that they have or the current position that they have. Most of it generally is business related. So MBAs, international business management, finance. Those are really more of the mature students that we see. Another one, as Jojo mentioned, is family and relatives abroad. So whether they're a sibling, an aunt, or a parent, they are really willing to sponsor their relatives abroad. We've noticed that this is not just they are based in the US and then they sponsor they study in the US. So in our Canada and AU market, we also have a bunch of students that actually their relatives are living and working in the US, but they sponsor them in a different country. So it's the same thing that we're seeing also in the US. What we see in terms of family and relatives is if they are based in the US, it means they have a green card, are applying for a green card, or they are already citizens of the States and really, or probably married an American. So they're actually quite established in the US already. And you know the history of the Philippines and the States already. We're quite close, and we actually really relate ourselves more to the US market or how the US works here in the Philippines. So that's why we speak English really well. And of course, there's another section where scholarships. So Education USA and Fulbright has really been here. I ever since I actually started in the industry, which was about 8, 10 years ago. So I've been really seeing Education USA and Fulbright really doing a lot of projects promoting all of you and promoting the scholarship. So they know that US is an expensive market, but they also know that they have to promote the education of the US. So they're quite active here. They have 2 offices here. Fulbright has its own office as well. But we also get a mix. So most of the time, when we say mix, it's probably self-funded or family-related scholarships or self-funded. So we really see that in terms of finding that funding or source, they would definitely make sure that they find that source before they actually leave. So if we're looking at mature students, one difference is if you'll notice that we notice actually is that they don't actually decide that fast compared to the UG market wherein they got an offer, their parents are able to pay and really process their visa right away. But for mature students, they will really make time and make sure that they collect and save up for the money before they actually pay and prepare for their visa. So I think one thing that Jojo can share today is because he is a parent of one of in the UG market, so definitely he can share something about this.
Yeah, thanks, Romina. Yeah, I actually had a son who just graduated in Massachusetts, just this last graduation. So the funding is not completely parents. It's also having that agreement with my son, because one of the things that we learned and that benefited in terms of funding was in high school he took AP classes, and by passing all his AP classes, it actually helped us save 1 semester in the US. Other thing is also an agreement with your with my son for him to work because they are allowed to work while they're there. So he maximized that. So the agreement we had was we paid for his tuition, we paid for his housing, but he was pretty much paying for everything else, his living expenses once he started working. So it makes, it works out. Having a clear plan on how we're going to do that. I also have another son who didn't study in the US, who took masters. Similar to what Romina said, it's a similar profile of a student who goes to her masters. He saved up his own money. He went on his own. Took a long time to choose because he funded himself. Yeah, and it all worked out. So yeah, it's really quite unique. But generally, the funding sources would really come from largely from the ones that you see on the screen. Thank you.
Thanks, Jojo. So I think one thing is for sure. So we in IDP, we actually don't get a lot of students that go abroad or whatever destination they choose and they all of a sudden disappear after a semester. We rarely see that kind of situation. If they do disappear in one of the semesters, it just means they transferred to another school, which we still guide them onshore. Okay. So for the next slide, I know you are quite curious about the student responses. So of course, in the past 6 months, we've seen a lot of changes in the international education industry. And of course, with the Trump administration, the strikes that has been happening, we've seen the revisiting their priority destination is an often response, especially when, last month there was a crisis when it comes to there's no visa scheduling during the peak season. So we've seen that about 30% of our US students have switched destinations. This is a mix because they got refused or they're actually really thinking about shifting because of really what's happening in market. What definitely hasn't changed though is that the US remains as a growing potential, even with the uncertainty as you still have the most popular universities. Again, as I mentioned, we really love the US. So, when especially the UG market, they really aim for the um, top ranking institutions, the Ivy Leagues. But then, of course, that's why it's so important that we do a lot of information dissemination because, of course, definitely not everyone will get into a high ranking university. But that's why we are able to highlight 2+2s, colleges, and making sure that they have the option and they have opportunities to really get to where they want. So, um, for colleges, I actually really do recommend that you explore the Philippine market because there's a lot of them that you can get like mature students, but also those that are really considering saving up, especially if they want to go to a high ranking university because not a lot of the parents actually know the 2+2 pathway. So it's important that you are also able to help us and support us by providing those information sessions where you can really share the value of your college. Um, and of course, the only thing we really need support on this is the visa. So if we're quite young with the Philippine market. So if you are able to really support us with visa preps, mock interview stages, how we can really help our students, your future students to get to your institution, any support that you can help us with, we will appreciate. So next slide, please. So, if you're curious about the how we can support you guys if you're looking at the Philippine market, here's our key strategy for the next fiscal year, which is from July to June. Really, basically, we want to improve our conversions. We're going to be monitoring that because this is our official first year really promoting the US. Of course, we want to promote you loud and proud. So we have projects in our social media, which I will share with you later, and of course growing you as a client or as a partner here in IDP Philippines. So in terms of social media, next slide please. We do have a lot of projects actually in social media. So if you are very limited in your budget, these are all free and you just really have to provide the videos. So the Get to Know IDP Partners is actually a way for you as a rep to share a video sharing about your institution and why they should be studying. We also have an FAQs because a lot of our students have questions, so we're trying to do that. But of course, if you have any Filipino students, any Southeast Asia students that are actually studying in your institution, and that's a student ambassador, please do share their contact, or if they're willing to take over our social media accounts, we would be happy to get those videos. Our goal this year is actually to create 50 plus videos and really expose US market to the Philippines. Of course, there are other social media projects that are more in fact impactful, and these are more paid engagements. These are just samples of those supports that you can give us. For the next slide, what you can see are the paid social media promotions, which is the campus conversation. So this is a podcast. This is a physical podcast. So this is when we will time it when you're actually traveling here in the Philippines. We also have something for the students. So you know how the unboxing works online, right? So we actually buy the gifts and the student opens these gifts while being interviewed why they decided to study in the US, why they chose your institution. And these are already sure students. So the student we will be choosing would be an approved student and really bound to go to your institution. And of course, we have the Facebook Live, which we use in our physical fairs. So this is a 10-minute segment in our social media platform so that if a student isn't able to experience physically the fair, they can actually experience it online in our Facebook Live. So those are just the simple projects, and this is the results from the last fair. So that was the Facebook Live. It was really nice. We had 1 million viewers. That's an example of the unboxing and of course the campus conversation. So right now these are new projects that we're doing. Some of the other clients have tested it out, and hopefully one of you guys will be able to support when you do visit here in the Philippines. Other things that, of course, when we want to say client exposure, we want to do events, 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 events. And I know it's a bit costly to go here in the Philippines. That's why we've retained our virtual fairs. You can see there that we've been doing actually virtual fairs since last fiscal year. It's really been a well attended one. So we did one in May. I think about 80 attendees were there, really just promoting US in general. So this July, we have the Business and Management Virtual Fair. And these weird sounding names, which is Palawan, Bulacan, Laguna, these are caravans. So these are smaller physical events. And what we try to do is really for you to experience these smaller cities and meet potential students. But of course, if you are limited in the Philippines, we do have two major fairs which happens in September and February. This is in Cebu and Manila, the two major cities. And definitely we want to invite you and really promote you. So far, what we're trying to do is where because of what's happening in the international education market, we actually have limited the slots. So we don't want a big event. We want to make sure that each of you guys are exposed equally, and these are all multi-destination events so that the cost remains low for everyone. It's just more cost efficient for all our partners in different destinations. If you're quite curious, so every fair we have about 3,000 registrants and about 20-25% show up rate. And what's good about it is that really we've been seeing a lot of parents going with their children when they do these fairs. So y- I see Jessica has a question, which is we actually do, but we do virtual fair. So if you can see there in the schedule, there's multi-destination virtual fair for masters and multi-destination virtual fair for university. So that's more UG focus. So we're really starting to explore in terms of the US because honestly, again, we are quite new in this market, but we definitely want to explore. One good thing about IDP Philippines is that every time you do a paid engagement with us, you actually get another webinar, another exposure for you, and you just get to choose which one you would like to participate. So technically, you're paying for two events all the time, or you're experiencing a full exposure when you're trying to really look into your budget and exploring the market. That's it. Thank you so much.
There we go. Thanks, Romina and Jojo. It's very informative, very helpful, a lot of information. I went ahead and jotted down the questions that have been submitted so far. And I'm going to start with them in order. So I'll fire these off, and Romina and Jojo, you can tag team or however you want to go about answering these questions. So Brittany Zhang wrote, how many of the 4.8 million students are studying for graduate programs and how many are studying for undergraduate programs? Not sure if you have a percentage breakdown that you can share.
I think the 4.8 not I think. The 4.8 million is higher education. That's just UG market. So there's if I'm not mistaken there's an 18 million high school market. Most of that is public definitely. So the one that Georgia showed earlier and shared, that's just the higher education market.
Okay. And for Christine, she asked, when does the school year begin and end in the Philippines?
Okay, so it's a bit confusing now because they changed the rules again. So in the olden times, which is when I was still studying, it was only just June to March. But then they moved it from August to May. But now, because of the rainy season and they realized that it's not going to work, they moved it back to June to March. So there's a mix right now. I'm certain for IB schools or international schools, they actually follow um, the international education. So it's August to May. But for other institutions, it's actually a choice for the private schools to choose when they would like to start. So it's really a mix between June to August and ending from March to May.
So maybe I'll just add a bit of insight on why. Because during our time when we were studying was June to March, but they tried to adapt the international to align it more to everyone else at August. However, because of the weather in the Philippines, it's rainy season and it's too hot during summer, and that's why a lot of public school students specifically have a hard time commuting to school during either very extreme heat or very extreme rainy season too. So that's why the country is in the middle of a transition again for the school year.
Mm. Okay, thank you. And from, I hope I pronounced this right, Alaya G, which universities in the Philippines are the main ones sending students abroad?
So this is really hard to say. We don't actually see a trend because, especially when you have a mature market, they really are everywhere in the Philippines. Like honestly, they can be graduating from a nursing college. They can be graduating the top four universities, which is UP, Ateneo, De La Salle, and UST. They can be coming from a state university. They really are from every, like what Jojo said, since we started in the pandemic doing virtual sessions and virtual office, everything digital, it has really broadened us in terms of reach. So they really come from different backgrounds and universities.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I'd like to add about that topic is IDP Philippines, because although we are new in the US, we're not new in all other destinations. We already have established partnerships with most of the universities and high schools in the Philippines. So which means we have that pipeline of students coming in, and all we need is to educate our counselors about options in the US, and then that would be added there. So whenever because if you look at our website or we do events, Romina did mention most of our or all of our events this year will be multi-destination. So once a student comes into an event or approaches IDP, then the options of all destinations that we offer, all partners that we offer will be offered to them. And that's why for me, it's not about focusing on specific universities or schools, because we do partner with a lot of them already currently in the whole footprint that you saw earlier from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao.
Okay, thank you both. And from Joe Knight, our community college's popular pathway for students.
So actually, we were quite surprised. So with the in the 6 months that we have, there has been a lot of applications in colleges as well. We initially thought that we are a university market, but it's not true. So we've seen some, especially mature students, they actually apply to associate degrees because that's within their budget realm as well, instead of doing a master's. Also, we've noticed that I know that the 2+2, we're trying to really rediscover how we're going to campaign that. But definitely we see potential in this market, especially if there's a market for scholarships, then definitely that's a good consideration. I know some of the colleges are offering also high school level as well. So it's really just a matter of time in terms of exposing these opportunities for these students and parents.
Thank you, Romina. And then Jessica, we already answered your question about graduate fairs. Let's see, we'll move on to Michelle Johnson. The return rate of Filipino non-immigrant visa is not high. How can we work with the U.S. Embassy to increase visa approval rates for Filipino students?
So we are working on that one, to be honest. So we're trying to really partner with Education USA and the Fulbright office, really trying to work a relationship. Jojo is here to help me out in that one, definitely. We are not sure what we've noticed in the refusals that we've gotten in the past months is that mainly it's because of the program that they've chosen, or I think it's really more like I feel like the immigration officers are protecting our students by refusing them. So one example is that we had one student applied for a college associate degree, has the money, sponsored by his brother, but then the brother was gonna get his green card in September, and that was the only reason why she was refused. It was not even about her plans. It was because the immigration officer said, "Can you apply after your brother gets his green card?" So it's not even related. the money's there, program, she's fit, she's psychometrician and wants to improve and wants to get into a hospital here in the Philippines. She's I think she's doing nursing management. She wanted to do that. But then it's just really weird. Like we don't see a trend right now in refusals, but we are working on that and really building our relationship with the US Embassy. That way we have a better understanding.
I think I'd like to add one thing to there. Although we're quite new in the US market, like what we mentioned earlier, in other mature markets for IDP Philippines like Canada or the UK, because we are very familiar with the immigration policies, we worked and made sure that whatever is required, it's like making sure that we really have genuine students that apply. So, for example, for both those destinations I mentioned, we're almost at 100% visa approval rates as IDP. It's much higher approval rates than the country, mainly because we really train our counselors and we need your help, and as we gather more data, like what Romina mentioned earlier about what are the real requirements to get the visas approved, it's easier for us to be able to filter and help students who really deserve to go and study in the US to get their visas to study in the US. So that's what we've been doing. We're really very, as I mentioned earlier, student first to make sure that we're able to help the students because at our level sometimes we actually filter out students if we during the counseling session we discover that they're really not fit to go to a certain destination. We would rather encourage them to go to a destination where their profile background and study plans are more aligned with the immigration requirements of those destinations. So as we learn more about the US market, it's going to be easier for us to be able to do that for the US as well.
Thank you, Jojo and Romina. I have a correction here. That question was anonymous. The one Michelle had asked, Michelle Johnson, in terms of maturing students, can you give an age range?
So there's the newly married ones and single. So that's an age of 28 to 38. And then we still have not a lot, but the 40s ages range as well. So that's really a mix. I think the oldest one we've had for Canada was 56. I think US so far, the one student that we have is 42. That's the oldest one we have experience for now.
That's great. Okay, thank you. And we have a question from Nellie Wadsworth. What's the success rate of visa approvals for students applying to US institutions?
I'm sorry I can't answer that because our applications is so low, but when we it's not really, you know, still we're still growing our market, but when we have been training it has been shared to us that the Philippine market is only at a 35% approval rating. I don't know how true that is because again, our numbers is not that high for comparison, but hopefully when we do present again, I can give you that data.
Thanks, Romina. And a question from Mona Menking. She had asked, if we're already working with IDP, how do we get the information about our programs to you in order for you to promote our graduate programs to our existing pipelines? And I think I can answer that one. You'd work directly with your client success manager. You can either schedule a meeting, send an email, however you'd like to communicate that information, and then the client success manager will send that directly to Romina and the rest of the network as well to provide that update and Teams channel group chat, as well as a bi-weekly newsletter. And then Romina and other destination managers will follow up if they have additional questions or would like to schedule a call with you or move forward in any other way. I don't know, Romina, if you want to add anything to that.
Yes, so we actually just finished and I just approved like a file where you can answer the form so that we can update our cheat sheet for the counselors so that we're just really better guided when we start recommending institutions for our students.
Great. Question from Vishaka. Which master degree programs are they interested in mostly? Are they inclined towards STEM programs?
So we really have a big business community. So business and management has always been highest, more than 25% in all destinations. So um, definitely for that. For STEM, it really depends on what sciences, but we see a growing market in the engineering and um what's that program? On the IT side, but definitely those areas are growing. It's not as big as the business though.
Romina, follow-up question from Mona about the cheat sheet link. You'll be emailing that out directly to our partners, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I will send it to Nick so that he can share it with all of you.
Okay, great. Are there any additional? I see a new question just popped up. From Calvin Lester, how would community colleges best position themselves to recruit students from the Philippines?
I think for starters, please schedule the training. Like we really want to learn, like all of the counselors. So all of our counselors are more than 2 years. So they really have experience already. And the uncertainties that they're feeling right now is because they're not yet aware of you guys. So we're really heavy on client trainings right now because they want to learn from you so that they are able to promote you. So we can always start with the trainings. Of course, the cheat sheet helps a lot. And definitely we would rather that you explore the Philippines, whether, try a virtual fair or a webinar or go here in the Philippines just to really experience how you can promote your market. Because again, we aren't able to promote you in international schools where most of them are studying abroad. So you really have to go here to experience that and promote yourselves in that market because we only get a portion of the market as well, right? We won't be able to really speak to those parents that are really just um, getting support from their college guidance counselors. So definitely you shouldn't think less of yourself, I guess, if you're a community college, because there's really a lot of potential for community colleges. It's, I mean, Canada is already a main example. We are a college market in Canada. And it's mainly because all of the colleges really believe in their programs and they promoted it here aggressively in the Philippine market. That's why they're more acknowledged and seen compared to universities. So I think it shouldn't stop colleges in the US to explore.
Thank you, Romina. Okay, so we've had some questions submitted prior to the presentation. I'm going to just ask a couple here because we do have a little time. How popular are creative programs like visual art, film, and animation? How can schools better position themselves in this niche landscape?
Okay. So we actually do it differently when you're a niche school, especially arts, design, fashion. We have one on security in Canada. So I said, you know what? Don't join any of our events. We will promote you in a specific sector because that's where you shine. So right now, one college, I think there's a Filipino director. He's also a teacher in that college. So what we're trying to do right now, although it's not good timing, is that we're reaching out to the universities that have these programs, film programs, so that he can meet with professors and students if there are still classes. He wanted to visit and really share his experience and promote his institution. We've done some that are actually going here, really talking to, this is fashion school. So he went, we only focus on three schools, only fashion programs, fashion students. It's super direct to the point and really just focusing on where your market is, if, especially if you're a niche program.
Thank you, Romina. What's the sweet spot in terms of ability to pay? Is there a range for undergrad, a range for postgraduate students you want to give?
I think Jojo will answer that.
Uh,
What is the sweet
No,
spot, Jojo?
um, because we're really still not familiar with the US. I think it's quite the Philippines is a very wide range, right? So there are those who can afford more, and I think the option for community college. There was a question earlier about that, because I remember when we were exploring for my son, when we were doing research, one of the options for him was to do his, the first few courses through a community college and then shift to the university that he wanted or the college he wanted to go to. So it's really hard to say. Um, um, it's really hard to say. But I know friends who have kids who study in who pay anywhere in the range of 40 to 80 thousand dollars in a year. So it's really quite diverse. I would say that the people who go to the US, a lot of them can really afford it, especially for undergrad. If a family sends their kids to undergrad, generally they have the funds to do that. And one thing we also noticed is um, certain schools tend to go to certain high schools in the Philippines uh, tend to go to the same schools, whether it's in Australia or the US or Canada or in the UK. So yeah,
Okay.
sorry we can't answer the actual number, but yeah, maybe as we really get more experience in the US market, we'll be able to get that insight for you.
But I think
Okay.
what we can share is that there definitely is a market for UG because there are really parents that will and is able to support their child for a bachelor's degree abroad, whether it's in the US or UK or Australia or Canada. We've seen that definitely.
Yep.
Especially that we have a BD team that has partnered with a lot of high schools.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. And our last question is about the healthcare degrees. This person wrote, they accept students, international students for nursing degrees. So are US BSN degrees easily transferable to the Philippines? I fear that students assume they'll get an H-1B sponsorship after OPT.
Okay. So I think there's a lot of misconception with nursing specifically for Philippines because we actually do have a lot of nurses that you see in the US specifically, right? So we don't see a lot of nurses that are practicing that actually does a nursing degree abroad. Most of the time, the nurses that have graduated with their bachelor's here locally would go abroad for work rather than study. However, we see nursing students that do not practice nursing to go abroad and study something else related to nursing. So I don't know if that makes sense. But I mean, a lot of the time people are asking, is there anyone interested doing nursing in the States versus the Philippines? There's really, or any actually other destination. We don't see a lot of nurses that does bachelor's because they have done their bachelor's here and then they will do further studies regardless. But it won't be nursing anymore. It's probably like health management or something more specialized.
Okay, thank you,
I
Romina.
think one is that I know that there was a medicine question. So another one is we've seen a lot of doctors that study here in the Philippines, and then most of the time they research US because they want to do their residency there. But also I think when they realize that it's so hard to get in medicine in the US, it doesn't give them a lot of hope. So they end up just, specializing something else as well.
Thank you. And that will wrap it up for our questions for the webinar. Romina, Jojo, do you have a last pitch for people to fly out to visit you or to attend your virtual
Yes,
webinar or
please.
your attend your virtual events, get involved, recruit?
Yes, please. So I know that we're a little bit new in the market and I hope you guys learned a lot, but I'm here definitely ready to support all of you. Please, I'm an email away or I'm a WhatsApp away. So if you have any more questions about recruitment, about visiting here, whether for vacation or for work, I'm here to support you guys. And definitely if you want to talk more about your plans and how you're gonna grow the Philippine market, I'm ready and I'm ready to share my insights as well.
Yeah, for me, Nick, I just want to thank everyone for listening to our session today. Really excited. Hopefully, one day we get to meet you guys face to face, get to host you in the country. The Philippines is very well known for hospitality, and I look forward to hosting all of you and seeing you face to face. Very familiar with the U.S. market. I have a son who graduated there. My wife actually finished her postgraduate in the U.S. My mom actually was a Fulbright scholar and finished studied in the U.S. as well. So a lot of relatives going to the US. We love the US market.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you both so much for your time and your expertise. We do appreciate it. It's a very insightful webinar. If our partners here are looking to learn more information or connect with Romina, welcome to message her directly or contact the client success team and we'll get you connected. Okay. You'll have a great morning, day, evening for Romina and Jojo. You're probably looking forward to going to bed. So thanks for your time. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you, everyone.